Welcome to this peaceful moment. Here, you will discover stories inspired by the quiet beauty of Japan. Each tale is like a soft breeze through a bamboo grove, carrying you away from the worries of the day. Imagine the scent of blooming cherry blossoms and the gentle flow of a nearby clear stream. Let these words and sounds cradle your mind in calm and serenity. Tonight, permit yourself to drift into a restful sleep. Let us begin this journey together. Footsteps through fallen leaves. Prologue: the path beneath the leaves. The valley was dressed in the colors of autumn crimson, amber, and fading gold. Each breeze loosened a scatter of leaves from the towering maples, letting them drift like quiet flames to the earth below. Along the forest path, the sound of footsteps rose soft, uneven, sometimes sharp, sometimes muffled. To most, it was only the sound of walking. But to Aya, a girl of 14 summers, it was something deeper. Each step on fallen leaves carried a rhythm, a voice, a reminder that seasons were not still pictures but living songs. She loved the path behind her grandmother's house, where the leaves lay thickest. Walking there, she often imagined that she was not alone, that her footsteps overlapped with those of the past. With the voices of ancestors who had walked the same earth long ago. She did not yet know how far those footsteps would carry her, or what lessons the leaves beneath her feet would whisper. Chapter 1: The Grandmother's Teachings. Aya lived with her grandmother, a quiet woman with a stooped back and eyes that had watched many harvest moons. Her parents worked far away in the city, sending letters and gifts, but it was the grandmother who guided Aya's days. Each morning, they swept the path of leaves together. Each evening, they shared rice and tea. And every autumn, her grandmother would remind her, "Listen to your steps. The earth remembers. Every sound you make is part of a greater harmony." Aya would nod, though she did not fully understand. Still, she loved to hear the dry crackle beneath her sandals, to feel the world answer her in that simple way. One twilight, as they walked side by side, her grandmother paused and closed her eyes. "Do you hear it? The path is not silent. Every leaf you step on was once green, alive, drinking the sun. Now it returns its voice to the earth." Aya tilted her head, listening more carefully. For the first time, she thought she heard not just the crunch of leaves, but a faint echo, like the breathing of the forest itself. Chapter 2: The Shrine in the Forest. Beyond the leaf-strewn path lay a small forest shrine, half hidden by moss and vines. Aya had often passed it but rarely entered. One afternoon, carrying a bundle of persimmons, she dared to step through the torii gate. Inside, the air was cooler, tinged with incense from offerings long faded. A stone fox sat guard, its face worn smooth by rain. Aya placed a persimmon at the base and bowed, though she was not sure what words to say. "Are you listening too?" she whispered. "Do the leaves speak to you?" The wind stirred, carrying a flurry of red maple leaves across the shrine's steps. Aya felt a strange stillness settle around her. It seemed the fox was watching. It seemed the leaves themselves had paused to listen. From that day forward, the shrine became part of her walk. She began to speak aloud to it her worries, her joys, her dreams. And though the stone fox never moved, Aya felt less alone. Chapter 3: Autumn Festival and Shadows. The village came alive for the harvest festival. Lanterns hung from every gate, and drums echoed through the night air. Aya joined her friends, carrying paper lanterns shaped like moons and rabbits, laughing as they paraded down the streets. Yet even in the noise, she kept hearing the memory of footsteps through leaves. The festival's joy was bright, but fleeting. Beneath it lay something deeper, a quiet sadness, like the passing of seasons. Her grandmother, sitting by the fire, explained festivals remind us that joy is brief. We dance knowing the lanterns will go dark, knowing the fields will grow bare. That is why it is beautiful. That night, Aya walked the path alone, festival songs fading behind her. In the bamboo shadows, she thought she saw figures, moving not threatening, but gentle, as though ancestors themselves had come to walk the leaf-strewn path beside her. Chapter 4: The Winter Path. When the first frost came, the leaves hardened. Aya walked the path wrapped in a thick shawl, her breath pale in the air. The sound beneath her feet changed. No longer the soft crackle of autumn, but the brittle snap of ice and the hollow crunch of frozen earth. She missed the warm chorus of fallen leaves. She missed the voices of autumn. Winter felt silent, lonely. Her grandmother said, "Silence is also a teacher. Just as the trees rest, so must we. Listen closely, there is music in stillness." At first, Aya heard nothing. But as the weeks passed, she began to notice the faint creak of bamboo bending under snow, the drip of melting icicles, the distant caw of a crow. Even silence, she realized, was not empty. Chapter 5: The Spring Return. When plum blossoms began to open, Aya felt the path come alive again. Snow melted into streams, and new shoots pushed through the softened soil. One day, walking the familiar way, she heard the first whisper of fresh leaves brushing under her sandals. The sound was faint, almost shy, but it carried the promise of return. She ran to the shrine, breathless, and offered a branch of blossoms. "The voices are back," she said softly to the fox. They were only sleeping. From then, she listened not only in autumn, but in every season: summer's cicadas, spring rain, even winter winds. She understood that the footsteps of each season were part of a greater cycle. Chapter 6: The Long Road Ahead. Years passed. Aya grew taller, then older. Her grandmother's steps slowed, her voice gentler, but her wisdom did not fade. One evening, as crimson leaves once again covered the path, Aya walked arm in arm with her. "Grandmother," she asked, "when you are gone, will I still hear you in the leaves?" Her grandmother smiled faintly. "If you listen, you will. Footsteps do not vanish. They sink into the earth, and the earth remembers." Aya held those words close. And when the day came that her grandmother no longer walked beside her, she found comfort in the sound beneath her feet. Every step, every leaf, was a reminder that she was not walking alone. Epilogue. Footsteps through time. Aya grew into a woman, then into a mother, then an elder of the village. Children laughed at her side, running along the same forest path, scattering leaves into the air. She taught them as her grandmother had taught her. Listen to your steps. The earth remembers. And when the harvest moon rose, and the valley was painted gold and red, Aya walked once more to the shrine. She bowed before the fox, now weathered further by time, and listened. The leaves beneath her sandals crackled, a chorus layered with voices her own, her grandmother's, and countless others who had walked before. The path was alive, not only with the present, but with the footsteps of all time. And Aya smiled, knowing that harmony was not something to be sought. It was already beneath her feet. The silent bell at midnight. Prologue. The bell that does not sound. On the mountainside, where mist curled like incense around the pines and the sound of flowing water never ceased, there stood an ancient temple. Its walls bore the weight of centuries, its roofs sagged beneath the memory of snow, and its gardens whispered of hands long gone. But most curious of all was the temple bell. It was large, bronze, etched with lotus petals that had grown faint with age. Suspended in a wooden frame darkened by countless winters, the bell appeared to hold the very night sky within its silence. No villager could recall the last time it had rung. Each New Year's Eve, when temples across the land struck their bells 108 times to cleanse human hearts of burdens, this one remained mute. Some said the monks feared to ring it. Others whispered of curses. Children dared each other to climb the temple path and touch its silent rim, as though expecting to awaken ghosts. For Hiro, a boy of 15, the bell was not merely an object of curiosity, it was a mystery that reached into his very bones. Chapter 1. The Mountain Temple. Autumn brought him there for the first time. He carried a basket of rice and persimmons at his grandmother's request. The climb was long, the steps worn and uneven, and the forest was alive with crimson leaves swirling in the wind. The temple seemed deserted when he arrived. Only the caw of crows circled above. And yet, there it was, the bell. Vast, silent, commanding. Drawn to it, Hiro placed his hand on its cold surface. For a moment, he thought he felt it tremble, though no sound came. "You hear it, don't you?" The voice startled him. From the veranda stepped an old monk, his robes patched but clean, his beard silver as frost. His eyes, though clouded, glimmered with hidden depth. "It feels alive," Hiro admitted. The monk nodded. "Alive, yes. Once, this bell rang so deeply that the valleys trembled. Its sound reached the sea. But one night, at midnight, it fell silent. Since then, no hand has drawn forth its voice." Hiro's brow furrowed. "Is it broken?" No crack mars its body. Its silence is not of metal, but of spirit. Hiro wanted to ask more, but the monk only smiled. Listen not with your ears, but with your heart. One day, you may understand. Chapter 2 The Old Monk's Words. Hiro began returning often, bringing small offerings, rice, chestnuts, a few coins. Sometimes the monk spoke, sometimes he simply sat beside Hiro in silence. Once, as wind rattled the bare branches, Hiro asked, "Why did it fall silent that night?" The monk gazed at the sky. "Because the world changed. The bell is not merely bronze, it is a mirror. When the hearts of those who hear grow clouded, its sound fades. Silence was not its choice, but ours." Hiro frowned. Then, if people change again, could it ring? The monk's eyes crinkled. Perhaps. But to awaken such a voice requires more than strength. It requires harmony. These words settled deep within Hiro, though he could not yet grasp their meaning. Still, each visit left him feeling as though silence itself were teaching him. Chapter 3 The Festival of Echoes. Winter's edge brought the village festival. Lanterns glowed, taiko drums thundered, and laughter filled the narrow streets. Hiro joined his friends, but even in the noise, he felt drawn back to the temple. Leaving the crowd, he climbed the path beneath a harvest moon. The bell loomed above, catching silver light. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw shadows moving near it, gentle, watchful, like ancestors come to walk beside him. The monk appeared, carrying a lantern. "The world celebrates," he said, "but you come here." Hiro nodded. "The noise is bright, but the silence feels deeper." The monk's smile was faint. Every sound must fade. Festivals remind us that joy is brief. Silence teaches us to treasure it. Together they stood before the bell, hearing only the wind stir through dry leaves. Hiro felt the silence was not emptiness, but fullness waiting. Chapter 4 Winter Silence. Snow came heavily that year. The path to the temple grew icy, yet Hiro climbed it often. The bell was dusted white, like a frozen moon. The sound of footsteps through snow was different from leaves, hollow, muffled, lonely. Hiro missed the crackle of autumn. "The world rests," the monk told him. "Silence is not absence. It is the earth's breath beneath the snow." At first, Hiro heard nothing. But as weeks passed, he noticed the creak of bamboo under weight, the drip of melting icicles, the crow's call echoing against white hills. Even silence had its own music. Chapter 5 The Pilgrimage Path. Years turned, and Hiro grew into a young man. Still, the bell remained silent. He began to wander beyond the village, seeking temples, teachers, and stories. He met travelers who spoke of bells that rang to heal the sick, bells that guided souls of the dead, bells whose tones carried prayers to the heavens. Each tale deepened his yearning. In Kyoto, he studied the art of sutras. In Nara, he listened to old priests. On coastal cliffs, he sat alone beneath stars. Everywhere he went, he heard echoes, but none matched the silence of his mountain bell. At last, weary, he returned home. The temple had aged, the monk grown frailer. Yet the bell waited, unchanged. Chapter 6 Midnight on New Year's Eve. The monk summoned Hero as the year turned. Snow covered the temple steps. Villagers gathered below, waiting to hear bells across the land. But this temple's bell stood still. The monk placed a hand on Hero's shoulder. "It is time. Strike the bell." Hero's heart pounded. He lifted the wooden beam, let it swing and struck. The bell shuddered. Air quivered. Yet no sound came. Only silence, vast and deep, rolled through the night. The villagers gasped. Hero trembled. "It's still silent." The monk whispered, "Listen closer." And in that silence, Hero heard something. The breath of the crowd, the rustle of robes, the beating of his own heart. Beneath it all, a resonance soft, endless like the world itself exhaling. Tears blurred his eyes. He understood the bell did not need to ring. Its silence was the sound. A sound that contained all others. The monk smiled faintly, then bowed his head. "You have heard it." That night, as fireworks lit the valley below, Hero stood before the bell, feeling its silent voice within him. Epilogue: The Silent Bell. The monk passed away the following spring. Hero took his place, tending the temple gardens, sweeping the steps, and welcoming travelers. And every New Year's Eve, he struck the bell at midnight. It was always silent, yet villagers climbed to hear it, standing in stillness together, hearts opened. Children asked, "Why does it make no sound?" Hero would smile gently. "Because silence is also a sound. If you listen, you will hear it." Years flowed like rivers. Seasons fell like leaves. But the bell remained, holding its silence as a gift. And those who walked the temple path learned to hear not only with their ears, but with their hearts. For in the silent bell at midnight lay the harmony of all things, the echo of past and future, the breath of mountains and rivers, the unbroken voice of the world itself. Moonlight on the garden stones. Prologue: The Silent Garden. The garden lay in stillness at the heart of the mountain temple. By day, it appeared to be nothing more than gravel, moss, and ancient stones. Travelers often passed it with only a glance, whispering to themselves that it was too plain, too bare to hold beauty. Yet when the sun descended and the moon began its slow ascent into the night sky, the garden revealed its secret. The raked gravel, pale as bone, shimmered under silver light, shifting into the image of flowing rivers. The tall stones, rising like islands from the sea, seemed to lean into one another as if they were quietly conversing. Shadows stretched long and soft across the ripples of sand, and the moss glowed with a quiet green fire, drinking in the moonlight. In those hours of silence, the garden was alive. It seemed to breathe, and in that breath, many souls through generations had found solace. Farmers weary from fields, travelers burdened by distance, monks in search of clarity, all had come and sat among the stones, listening to the silence until it spoke to them in its own language. It was in this same garden, beneath the quiet gaze of the moon, that young Akio would come to find the path of his life. He did not know it yet. To him, the garden was still nothing more than sand and stone, his grandfather's duty and his own chore. But the garden had been waiting for him, as it had waited for so many before. And the moon, patient and eternal, was ready to illuminate his way. Chapter 1: The Garden Keeper's Grandson. Akio was 16 when his grandfather first asked him to help with the raking. The boy sighed as he dragged his feet across the wooden veranda. "Why do we bother with this every morning? The wind erases the lines, the rain washes them away. Isn't it meaningless?" His grandfather paused, leaning on the rake. His back was bent from years of tending the garden, but his eyes carried a sharp light. "Meaningless? Then tell me, Akio, is breathing meaningless? Each breath disappears, yet we breathe again." Akio frowned. "That's different. Breathing keeps us alive." The old man smiled. "And this garden keeps us awake. Awake to things we would otherwise forget." Reluctantly, Akio followed. His first attempts with the rake were clumsy. The gravel lines broke, the circles around stones wobbled. His arms grew sore, and frustration burned his face. "It will never look right," he muttered. His grandfather placed a hand over his own. "Do not force the rake. Let it glide. The pattern is already there. You are only uncovering it." That night, unable to sleep, Akio slipped outside. The garden stretched before him, bathed in moonlight. The patterns he had drawn that morning, messy, uneven, now shimmered like rivers flowing into the distance. The stones, once dull and lifeless, seemed to rise as mountains beneath the silver sky. For the first time, Akio felt the silence pressing against him. It was not empty. It was vast, deep, like the surface of a lake hiding infinite depths. He stood motionless until dawn. When his grandfather emerged at daybreak, he found Akio still watching. "So," the old man said softly, "you have begun to hear the garden." Chapter 2: Lessons in Silence. From then on, Akio's days were filled with raking. He began to notice the subtleties, how the rake's teeth caught on tiny stones, how the patterns shifted with the morning sun, how the garden seemed to breathe differently with each season. But it was not easy. Some mornings, the gravel resisted him. Lines collapsed, circles broke. His hands ached, his back stiffened. Frustrated, he once threw the rake aside. Why must it be perfect? Tomorrow it will be ruined by the wind. His grandfather, watching from the veranda, shook his head. "Do you think perfection is the point? Look again." Akio looked. His messy lines caught the dawn light, stretching like waves across the garden. Though uneven, they shimmered as if alive. "The garden does not ask for perfection," his grandfather said. "It asks for sincerity. Each line is a reflection of your heart. If your heart is restless, the lines will stumble. If your heart is calm, they will flow. The garden teaches you about yourself." Akio fell silent. From that day, he tried not to force the rake, but to breathe with it. Slowly, the patterns grew smoother. Slowly, his heart began to understand. At night, the moon revealed yet another truth: the patterns he had made by day became something new beneath silver light. Straight lines looked like flowing water. Circles rippled outward as though stones had just been dropped into a pond. Nothing remained as it had been. The garden, Akio realized, was never the same twice. And perhaps neither was he. Chapter 3: The Stranger by the Gate. One autumn evening, as the air grew crisp and the scent of pine smoke lingered in the village, Akio saw a traveler standing at the temple gate. The man was weathered, his robe patched, his sandals worn. He leaned on a wooden staff, gazing at the garden with quiet reverence. "May I sit?" he asked softly. Akio nodded. They sat together in silence as the moon rose. The traveler's eyes never left the stones. After a long while, he whispered, "I have walked countless roads in search of answers. Tonight, I see them here." Akio tilted his head. "Answers to what?" The man's face, lined with age and hardship, softened. "To why the world changes, and yet remains the same. Look at these stones. They stand unmoved, yet their shadows shift each moment. The sand patterns vanish, yet are drawn anew. The garden teaches without words." Akio thought of his grandfather's words. For the first time, he felt them settle into his chest. When the traveler left the next morning, he bowed deeply toward the stones, as if laying his burdens down at their feet. Chapter 4: Shadows of Winter. Winter came suddenly, with snow that buried the gravel and cloaked the stones in white. The rake was set aside. For Akio, the garden felt lost beneath the snow. One night, standing under the moon, he whispered, "It's gone." His grandfather, beside him, shook his head. "No, the garden never disappears. It only wears another robe. Look again." Akio looked. The stones stood like mountains above a white sea. Shadows stretched long, like brush strokes across paper. The silence was deeper than ever, blanketing everything. For the first time, Akio understood that the garden was not bound by the rake. Even snow, even emptiness, was part of its teaching. But that winter also brought sorrow. His grandfather grew ill. The strong hands that had raked for decades trembled. The man's breath grew shallow. Akio sat at his side, restless, fearful. "Don't leave me," he whispered. His grandfather's hand, frail but warm, clasped his. "I am not leaving. I will be here, in the stones, in the sand, in the moonlight. Remember the garden. Listen." When his grandfather passed with the first thaw of spring, Akio stood alone in the moonlit courtyard. For the first time, he lifted the rake not as a duty, but as a prayer. Chapter 5: The Pilgrimage of the Stones. Years passed. Akio grew into the garden's keeper. His hands grew strong, his breath steady. Each morning, he raked patterns. Each evening, he watched them transform under the moon. Villagers came to sit in silence. Some wept quietly. Some prayed. Some simply breathed. Travelers paused on their journeys, leaving lighter than when they had arrived. Akio never explained the garden. He did not need to. The silence spoke for itself. Once, a child tugged his sleeve. "Why do the stones shine at night?" Akio smiled gently. "Because the moon listens to them. And when we listen to them, they shine for us." Chapter 6: The Full Moon Ceremony. The temple held its festival each year when the moon was fullest. Lanterns lined the path, their flames flickering like fireflies. Drums and laughter echoed from the village below, yet here in the garden all was still. People gathered in silence as the moon rose high. Akio struck a small handbell. Its tone lingered in the air, then dissolved into quiet. And in that silence, the garden spoke. Not with words, but with presence. The stones, the sand, the moss, the shadows, the moon, and the stillness of human hearts became one. For a single moment, time itself seemed to pause. Epilogue: moonlight on the garden stones. Akio grew old. His hair silvered, his hands trembled. Still, he rose each morning to tend the garden. One night, beneath the full moon, he sat alone among the stones. He remembered his grandfather's voice, the weary traveler, the villagers, the children. All their footsteps, all their stories, seemed woven into the silence around him. The garden was unchanged, yet never the same. Its silence carried everything. Closing his eyes, Akio finally understood the garden did not belong to him, nor to his grandfather, nor even to the temple. It belonged to the silence of the world itself, carried in every shifting shadow of moonlight. And so the stones remained, silver beneath the night sky, whispering eternity in every breath of stillness. The Hidden Path Through Pines. Prologue: The Whispering Forest. In the foothills where mountains folded like waves into the horizon, there stretched a forest of pines so vast and old that even the villagers spoke of it with a hushed reverence. Their needles whispered in the wind like the voices of monks reciting sutras, endless and low. The air within the forest carried the resinous scent of sap, sharp and clean, as if it sought to purify all who entered. It was said that somewhere within those trees lay a hidden path, a narrow way that did not appear to everyone, but only to those who walked without haste and without expectation. Elders recalled that when they were children, they sometimes glimpsed the faint line of stones disappearing deeper into the pines, and when they followed, the forest seemed to lead them somewhere both familiar and strange. Most laughed at such stories. Life in the village was already demanding enough fields to plow, roofs to mend, rice to dry beneath the sun. Yet the tales lingered, like shadows after twilight. For Akira, a boy of 15, the stories became more than shadows. They became a calling. Chapter 1: The Boy Who Listened to Pines. Akira often wandered into the forest's edge when his chores were done. While his friends played by the river, he found himself listening to the sound of the pines. Their whispering soothed him in a way that human voices could not. His grandmother, with whom he lived since his parents' passing, noticed his absences. "You walk too far into those woods," she scolded gently. "Remember, the path is not for the eyes of children. You could be lost." But Akira only bowed and remained silent. How could he explain that he did not feel lost beneath the trees? That when the wind stirred the needles and shadows danced across the earth, he felt instead as though the forest were guiding him? One twilight, as the village lanterns flickered alive, Akira lingered longer than usual among the pines. He followed no trail, only the faint pull in his chest. Then, without knowing why, he stopped. Before him stretched a narrow strip of mossy stones, barely visible beneath fallen needles. A path. His heart quickened. He had found it, or perhaps it had found him. Chapter 2: First Steps on the Hidden Path. The stones were uneven, some half-buried, as though forgotten by centuries. Yet when Akira stepped upon them, they held firm. The forest grew quieter, as if holding its breath. He walked slowly, the way one moves in a dream. Shafts of moonlight filtered between branches, guiding him onward. The air grew cooler, sharper, yet not unfriendly. After what felt like hours, the path opened into a small clearing. At its center stood a weathered stone lantern, unlit, wrapped in vines. The sight filled Akira with awe. It was not the lantern itself, but the way the clearing seemed suspended in silence, as though time had stepped aside. He reached out to brush moss from the lantern's base. For a brief moment, he thought he heard a bell, soft, distant, like a temple bell carried by the wind. Yet no temple stood nearby. When he returned home that night, his grandmother looked at him long. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. Akira froze. She nodded slowly. "I once walked that path too, when I was your age." Chapter 3: Grandmother's Memory. By the hearth fire, his grandmother told him her story. "It was after the war," she said softly, her eyes reflecting flames. "The village had little food, and people quarreled. One evening, when I was your age, I followed the sound of the wind through the pines and found the path. It led me to a clearing where a lantern stood. I sat there and wept. And in that silence, my heart grew calm. I returned with nothing in my hands, but the quarreling in my chest had quieted." Akira listened, wide-eyed. "The path," she continued, "is not always visible. It shows itself when the forest believes you are ready. But remember, what you seek is not always what you find. The forest reveals, but it also tests." Akira bowed. That night, as he lay awake, he wondered what was the forest preparing to show him. Chapter 4: Trials in Silence. Over the following weeks, Akira visited the path often. Each time it revealed something new. Once, he heard rushing water and followed until he found a stream that had not been there before, glimmering with moonlight. Another time, he saw a fox watching him from the stones, its eyes like twin lanterns. The fox did not flee, nor did Akira chase, they only regarded each other, as if measuring souls. Yet the forest was not always kind. Some nights, the path twisted into shadow and Akira lost his way. Fear gnawed at him as he stumbled through the dark, until the sound of pine needles brought him back. Other nights, the path vanished entirely, leaving him among trees that felt endless. Through these trials, Akira learned patience. He learned to walk not with urgency, but with presence. The forest was teaching him as it had taught his grandmother before. Chapter 5: The Hermit of Pines. One evening, as cicadas hushed and the moon rose full, Akira found a man seated by the lantern. His hair was silver, his robe patched, his face weathered by years. He greeted Akira with a nod. "You have walked far for one so young," the hermit said. Akira bowed. "Do you live here?" The man smiled faintly. "The forest shelters me. I walk the path when it appears. I listen to the pines when words grow heavy." Together they sat in silence, listening. At last the hermit said, "This path is not about reaching somewhere. It is about listening to what cannot be spoken." Before dawn, the hermit rose and vanished deeper among the trees, leaving only the whisper of his sandals on needles. Chapter 6: Winter Pines. Snow came. The path vanished beneath white drifts. Yet Akira returned, his breath steaming, his feet sinking. To his surprise, the stones still guided him faintly, like dark brushstrokes against paper. In the clearing, the lantern stood cloaked in snow, resembling a monk in meditation. Akira brushed the snow away and bowed. For the first time, he felt not like a visitor, but like a caretaker. The forest whispered in tones softer than ever, as if acknowledging his devotion. Chapter 7: The Burden and the Gift. Years passed. Akira grew tall, his shoulders broadened by work. His grandmother grew frail. One spring, as plum blossoms drifted like snow, she called him to her side. "You must remember," she whispered, her voice thin, "the forest gave you its path. Guard it, but do not cling. Share it when the time is right." When she passed, Akira returned to the clearing and lit the lantern for the first time. Its glow shimmered against the pines, as if guiding her spirit. That night, he wept, but the forest's whisper steadied him. Chapter 8: The Pilgrims. Word of the hidden path began to spread among villagers. Some dismissed it as rumor, but others came quietly, seeking solace. Akira did not guide them directly, he only taught them to listen. "Do not hurry," he said. "Do not demand. Walk gently. The path will reveal itself if you are ready." Some returned claiming they had seen nothing. Others spoke of the lantern, the fox, the sound of bells. Each carried something different, yet all carried silence within them. Akira realized then the hidden path was not his to keep. It belonged to all who walked with sincerity. Chapter 9: The Festival of Pines. One midsummer, the village held a festival not only in fields, but also at the edge of the forest. Lanterns hung among the trees, their flames swaying like fireflies. Children laughed, elders prayed, and music floated faintly. When night deepened, Akira led them to the beginning of the path. "Do not speak," he urged. "Let the pines guide you." One by one, villagers entered. Some saw only trees. Others glimpsed the stones. But all emerged calmer, their eyes softened, their breaths slower. For the first time, the hidden path became part of the village's heart. Epilogue: the eternal whisper. Years turned to decades. Akira grew older, his hair touched by silver. Still, he walked the path, still he tended the lantern. Sometimes he found the hermit again, sometimes only foxes or streams that vanished by dawn. One moonlit night, Akira sat alone in the clearing. He thought of his grandmother, of the villagers, of the many footsteps that had touched the hidden stones. The pines whispered, endless and low. Akira closed his eyes, and in that silence, he felt himself dissolve into the forest, into the path, into the stones, into the eternal whisper of needles in the wind. And the path remained, waiting for the next soul to find it. Lanterns floating on the river. Prologue: the river's memory. In the valley village of Manawa, the Hoshigawa River wound its way between fields and bamboo groves. Every summer, the villagers gathered on its banks to release lanterns into the water. The festival was both a celebration and farewell, a bridge between the living and those who had passed. For Haru, a carpenter's apprentice, the river was not only a lifeline for the village but also a place of sorrow. A year before, his father, Daichi, had drowned while repairing a wooden boat. Since then, the river felt like an enemy, a thief that had taken what could not be returned. As another summer approached, Haru struggled with whether to face the Lantern Festival or to turn away from it entirely. Chapter 1: The Silent Riverbank. On the evening of the festival, the village stirred with color and sound. Children carried lanterns painted with cranes, chrysanthemums, and pine trees. The scent of grilled food mingled with incense from the shrine. Haru walked toward the river reluctantly, clutching a lantern he had built himself. Its cedar frame was carefully joined, the paper plain except for his father's name brushed on one side. The closer he came to the crowd, the heavier the lantern felt. By the water's edge, he froze. Families knelt together, lowering their lanterns into the current. Laughter, tears, and prayers mixed with the rippling of the river. Haru's chest tightened. He wanted to release his lantern, yet his hands would not move. A voice interrupted his hesitation. "Is it yours?" Haru turned. A girl about his age stood nearby, holding a lantern painted with soft blue waves. She had a sketchbook tucked under her arm, her black hair tied loosely with a ribbon. "Yes," Haru answered. She nodded. "I'm Maiko. I draw the river." Haru looked at her lantern. "Is it for someone?" She smiled faintly. "My father. He was a fisherman." They stood in silence, watching as lanterns drifted past. Then, as though by instinct, they lowered their own lanterns together. The flames trembled, then floated steadily downstream. Haru felt his grip loosen, his breath release. For the first time, the river did not seem only to take. Chapter 2: The Hidden Path. In the days after the festival, Haru returned often to the Hoshigawa. At first, he told himself he was only checking the wood of the bridge or gathering driftwood. But each time, Aiko was there, sketching on the riverbank. They began to talk. Aiko told him how she painted what she could not keep in memory: the lines of her father's hands, the slope of his shoulders as he cast his nets. Haru shared how his mother taught him carpentry, and how he wished to shape wood into something that endured longer than grief. One evening, Aiko showed him a drawing of the stone bridge near the village. Beneath the arch, she had sketched dozens of lanterns gliding under the curve. "Lanterns drift, but the bridge remains," she said. "I like to think our memories are the same." Haru studied the drawing. The idea felt simple yet profound. Perhaps memory was not only what vanished with the flame, but also what endured, like stone beneath water. Chapter 3: A Priest's Lesson. Late in summer, the old priest Shunryu joined them by the river. He leaned on his staff, his eyes deep as the current. "Do you know why we set lanterns afloat?" he asked. "To guide the spirits," Aiko answered. "Yes. But not only for them. The lanterns are for the living. Each carries what we release: sorrow, longing, words unsaid. The river does not steal. It carries." He told them of his youth, when he had lost his sister. His lantern had overturned, its flame extinguished. In despair, he thought the river had swallowed her memory. But his teacher had said, "Even unlit lanterns are carried. The fire is for us, not for them." Shunryu's gaze softened. "Do not fear the river. Trust that it bears what we cannot hold forever." The priest's story lingered in Haru's heart. The river's voice sounded different now, not a thief's whisper, but something closer to prayer. Chapter 4: Shadows and Echoes. Autumn approached. The fields ripened, and the air grew cool. Yet Haru and Aiko still met by the river. She filled her sketchbook with lanterns and bridges, while he began to carve wooden frames more finely than before. One evening, Haru brought Aiko a gift: a small cedar lantern he had carved. Its frame was delicate but strong, with a chrysanthemum etched on one side. "For you," he said. Aiko's eyes shone. "It's beautiful. But why me?" "Because you remember with drawings, and I remember with wood," Haru said. "This way, our memories join." Her fingers traced the carvings. Then her expression grew troubled. What if memories fade? What if one day we forget their faces and voices? Haru looked at the river. "Then we will remember for each other." Her tears fell silently. Haru did not try to stop them. He simply sat with her, the two of them listening to the steady flow of water. Chapter 5: Lanterns once more. The next summer, the festival returned. This time, Haru and Aiko prepared a single lantern together. On its panels were her drawings of cranes and waves, his carvings of chrysanthemums. On the side, they wrote for Daichi and Masanori, fathers carried by the river. Kneeling side by side, they set the lantern on the water. Its flame burned steadily, gliding into the current among hundreds of others. Yet to them, it felt brighter, bound by both memory and shared hands. They did not cry out or cling. They only watched in silence, hearts calm, as the lantern drifted away. Epilogue: the light that remains. Years passed. Haru became a skilled carpenter, Aiko a teacher of art. Each summer, they returned to the Hoshigawa with their children, lighting lanterns together. The river continued to carry memories, bearing sorrow into peace and loneliness into companionship. Lanterns trembled upon its surface, fragile, radiant, eternal. And the villagers of Manawa understood, so long as love endured, the light would never fade.